Hello, and welcome to Cozy Bedtime, a snug little spot where evening stories and gentle relaxation lead the way to a peaceful night's sleep. Tonight, we share another soothing tale designed to calm your thoughts and invite a sense of comforting tranquility. But first, let's pause for a moment to prepare body and mind for rest. Find a comfortable position, and with each slow inhale and gentle exhale, imagine the day's worries drifting away. Detaching from daily busyness can be tough, especially as bedtime nears. But remember, the less we worry about falling asleep, the more easily our minds can release lingering tension. Allow the gentle rhythm of your breathing to wash away any leftover concerns, and let tonight's story guide you into deep relaxation. Now, settle in and let the warm, comforting atmosphere of cozy bedtime envelop you. Enjoy the story, and may your night be peaceful and restorative. The wind, a March brute, hurled itself against the cottage door as Alara wrestled it shut, the latch clicking home like a final, firm word. Rain streamed from her boots onto the welcome mat. Her umbrella, slick and dripping, found its lean place by the coat stand. Shucking off the damp trench coat felt like shedding the storm itself. A relieved sigh escaped her as she swept wind-tangled strands of hair from her eyes, carrying a small sack of provisions toward the compact kitchen counter. Roaring in, bleeding out, the old adage went for this tumultuous month. Mother Nature, Alara mused, was certainly delivering on the roar. An evening purpose-built for sealing oneself away, for the embrace of hearth and home. No further skirmishes with the elements were planned for this night. She nudged the dial on her countertop convection oven, coaxing it to life, then padded across the charming confines of her sitting room toward the bedroom. There, damp clothes gladly yielded to the soft tyranny of favorite flannel pajamas. Perched on the bed's edge, she tugged on the fuzziest, warmest socks imaginable, stretching her liberated feet out with pure pleasure. Oh, the bliss of unburdening them after the day's long march. For a quiet moment, Alara sat bathed in the lamp's amber glow, surveying her sanctuary. Providence had smiled these past years, granting her this small carriage house adjacent to a grand historic home. Her haven during a sabbatical spent chronicling the sentinels of the Maine coast, its lighthouses. It was precisely the refuge she'd craved. Compact, orderly, imbued with charm. Her landlady resided nearby, presiding over the venerable main house on the shared grounds. An ideal arrangement, truly. The autonomy of a separate dwelling without the encumbrance of extensive upkeep. The bedroom itself possessed a gentle sweetness. Long ago, converted from its equine origins, the carriage house boasted appealing hardwood underfoot, a cleverly designed kitchen, and, blessedly, a fireplace gracing the living area. Alara often found herself adrift in contemplation, gazing from the kitchen window across the estate gardens, feeling momentarily like a figure stepped from a storybook. Mustering resolve, she padded silently back across the floorboards to the kitchen. From the grocery sack emerged a container of takeaway macaroni and cheese. Lid discarded, it slid into the warming oven, set for a slow bake, the kind that promised a burnished, bubbling crust. True comfort food demanded patience. The fireplace, modernized at some point to a gas flame, sprang to cheerful life with the flick of a switch. Elara retrieved several notebooks and a pen from her satchel near the door. Work beckoned this evening. International Women's Day loomed. A friend, a history teacher, had posed a question. Knowing Elara's immersion in lighthouse lore, were there women among the keepers? A marvelous inquiry, Elara had thought, instantly agreeing to craft a presentation for her friend's high school class. After a year steeped in maritime history, it felt a brilliant chance to illuminate the often overlooked contributions of female guardians of the light. The only dilemma: selecting from the wealth of worthy candidates. Sinking into her preferred plush armchair, Elara propped her feet on the matching ottoman. She opened a notebook, her eyes scanning the meticulously gathered research. Astrid Renner, she decided, must be the starting point. The tireless tender of Sentinel Shoal's light in New York Harbor. To grasp Frau Renner's tenacity, one had to begin at her origins. Unlike many women who inherited the mantle of light-keeping, Astrid Renner wasn't born to the service, nor even on American soil. In 1882, age 37, she voyaged from Germany to the United States, her young son, Matthias, in tow. Initial employment as a cook in a New Jersey boarding house led her to encounter Johann Renner, keeper of the Sandy Hook Light. He became her English tutor, then her confidant, and finally her husband. Thus, around the age of 40, Astrid Renner first entered the world of wicks and watches, moving to the Sandy Hook station with Johann. Later, in 1885, Johann received orders transferring him to Sentinel Shoal's Light, roughly a mile north of Staten Island. Compared to Sandy Hook, Sentinel Shoals was starkly isolated, offshore, anchored to a submerged ledge. The new station initially cast a pall over Astrid. When I first came to Sentinel Shoals, she confided later in life, the sight of water whichever way I looked made me lonesome. I refused to unpack my trunks at first. Gradually, though, trunk by trunk, she yielded. After a while, they were all unpacked, and I stayed on. Soon after, she bore a daughter, Liesel, and the family of 4 settled into their water-bound existence. Elara paused, contemplating Astrid's words. The woman's resolute stoicism resonated deeply. Widow, mother, immigrant, she'd embraced available work, discerned a practical path, and accepted even the profound isolation of that remote station. Her resolve was formidable, yet fate continued to test it. In 1890, illness claimed Johann Renner. His final words to his wife were reportedly, "Mind the light, Astrid." Elara couldn't help a small smile. Astrid struck her as the sort who scarcely needed the instruction. Naturally, she assumed his full duties while raising her 2 children. Yet, despite her proven competence, her superiors doubted a woman's capacity for the role. While she flawlessly maintained the light, they persisted in seeking a male replacement. It took several years before they conceded defeat. In 1895, Astrid Renner was officially appointed keeper of Sentinel Shoal's Light. Ilara knew from her deep dives into history that tending the lamp itself was merely the prologue to a keeper's daily saga. Astrid once remarked the light was more difficult to care for than a family of children. Each day demanded meticulous attention, polishing reflectors, scraping ice in winter's grip, activating the fog signal in foul weather. If the siren failed, she resorted to manually striking the fog bell until repairs could be made. Concurrently, she remained a mother, the custodian of their unconventional home. A 1906 New York Times piece quoted her saying she had as much housework as the Waldorf Astoria, a testament, Ilara knew, to the scale of the famed New York hotel. Cooking, bed-making, cleaning, all fell to her alone. Even procuring basic supplies or ferrying her children to school on Staten Island required a solitary mile-long row. The sheer difficulty of accomplishing everyday tasks others took for granted in such isolation was hard for Ilara to fully grasp. And of course, Astrid was a rescuer, credited with saving at least 50 souls from drowning near the lighthouse during her 33-year tenure. Frau Renner retired in 1919, having witnessed Sentinel Shoal's transition from kerosene lamps to oil vapor and finally to electricity. Towards the end, the 5-room light station housed her son Matthias, now assistant keeper, his wife, and their 5 grandchildren. Astrid spent her twilight years in a modest cottage on Staten Island, tending a garden, her gaze often drifting towards Sentinel Shoal's light across the water. Upon her passing, the New York Post memorialized her. In the sight of the city of towers and the torch of liberty lived this sturdy little woman, proud of her work and content in it, keeping her lamp alight and her windows cleaned so that New York Harbor might be safe for ships that pass in the night. Yes, Ilara affirmed silently. Astrid Renner absolutely belonged in the presentation. Setting the papers aside, she rose from the enveloping chair and returned to the convection oven. Peeking through the small glass door revealed bubbling contents crowned with a delectable golden brown layer. The savory perfume of sharp cheddar drifted across the counter. Dinner was served. She plated the macaroni and cheese, retrieved a fork, and carefully navigated back to her fireside perch. Curling into the chair once more, she placed the plate on the small adjacent table, steam rising invitingly. A moment's cooling was required. Turning back to her notebook, she leafed through the pages, seeking her next heroine of the lighthouses. Her finger paused at Cora Mayhew. Unlike Astrid, Cora had known several posts before ascending to headkeeper. Before arriving at Osprey Point Light in Maryland in 1922 with her husband, she'd served alongside him as assistant keeper at no fewer than 4 lighthouses in neighboring Virginia. She remained the assistant when their tenure at Osprey Point began, but her husband passed away in 1925. Leaving her widowed at 43. Intriguingly, she wasn't much younger than Astrid Renner had been upon becoming a headkeeper. Cora immediately took up her late husband's duties, yet securing the official appointment proved challenging, despite her 2 decades of experience. In contrast to Astrid's case, Cora's gender wasn't the obstacle. Indeed, 3 previous keepers at Osprey Point had been women. Instead, the civil service balked at her age, deeming her too old for the demands of the position. Fortunately, Cora Mayhew was not easily dissuaded. She appealed the ruling, ultimately receiving her appointment directly from President Calvin Coolidge, making her the sole female keeper ever granted a presidential commission. Her salary was set at $1,140 annually, roughly equivalent to $18,000 today. Much like Astrid, Cora juggled family life with her duties. She raised 3 children, Letitia, Silas, and Thomas. Ilara had unearthed an old black and white photograph showing Cora and young Thomas tending a flock of turkeys near the lighthouse, a practical necessity given the family's responsibility for their own provisions. Reaching the nearest town meant either a long 14-mile drive or an 8-mile boat trip across the Chesapeake. Furthermore, unloading supplies involved navigating a 137-step stairway down to a floating dock, then hoisting heavy goods upwards with a windlass and winch. Small wonder the family maintained a garden and livestock to sustain themselves. Cora diligently performed all the standard keeper responsibilities. Before Osprey Point's electrification in 1943, this included replenishing oil in the lamps and trimming wicks. On one occasion, the fog bell mechanism failed. She was forced to ascend to the massive 200-pound bell and manually strike its 50-pound clapper 4 times a minute for nearly an hour. During this Herculean effort, she missed a telephone call from her son-in-law, announcing the birth of her granddaughter. Ilara chuckled at the image of such a remarkably fit grandmother. Nevertheless, Cora later confessed, "I was never more exhausted in my whole life," a sentiment Ilara readily believed. For 22 years, Cora faithfully executed this demanding role, retiring at 65 in 1947. When queried about her lighthouse duties, she famously quipped, "Oh, it was an easy light chore, but my feet got tired, and climbing the tower has given me fallen arches." Her departure marked the end of an era. She was the last serving civilian female lightkeeper in the United States. Thanks to her and the 3 capable women preceding her, Washingtonian magazine once dubbed Osprey Point Light the feminist lighthouse of the Chesapeake. Echoing Astrid, Cora never lost affection for her station. She retired just 6 miles away, close enough to still witness its steadfast beam piercing the night sky. Ilara paused, jotting down a few notes. Then, with anticipation, she set the papers aside and reached for her dinner. As she savored the rich, cheesy pasta, her gaze drifted idly towards the flickering flames in the hearth. The evening was mellowing into that languid phase where relaxation deepens and the mind begins to roam. The fire conjured images of the ceaseless tending of wicks and flames in pre-electric beacons. Male or female, every keeper shouldered immense responsibilities. She doubted her own capacity for such a life. Finishing the last decadent bites of macaroni and cheese, Ilara rose once more and washed her plate and fork. The kitchen, nearer the window and door, felt distinctly cooler now. She retrieved a sweater draped over a nearby chair and slipped it on. Then, lifting her cheerful red kettle from the back burner, she filled it and set it to boil before returning to her research nook and picking up her notebook again. A few more turns of the page revealed the perfect next candidate. A presentation like this felt incomplete without mentioning perhaps the most celebrated lightkeeper in American history. Serena Vance, born Idawali Zaradia, but known universally as Serena. She was the second of 4 children born to Captain Horatio Vance, who became only the second keeper at Beacon Rock Light in Newport, Rhode Island, starting in 1857. Completed just 3 years prior, Beacon Rock wasn't terribly remote, perched on a ledge a mere 220 yards from shore. Yet, it remained an island. Every family necessity required retrieval from the mainland via rowboat. Young Serena rapidly achieved extraordinary skill with that rowboat, a proficiency that proved vital. Within 4 months of the family's arrival, Captain Vance suffered a debilitating stroke, rendering him unable to work. 15-year-old Serena stepped forward, assisting her mother with all the keeper's duties, while also caring for her disabled father and chronically ill younger sister. Added to this burden was the daily task of rowing her siblings across to Newport for school. Renowned as one of the town's finest swimmers, Serena was hailed as a hero even before her lighthouse years, having rescued 4 men whose boat capsized when she was just 12. Later, at 27, she famously dashed into icy waters, shoeless, joining her brother to save 2 soldiers whose vessel overturned during a snowstorm. This act brought considerable acclaim. One soldier gifted her a gold watch, while his comrades at Fort Adams collected $2 $18 in gratitude. Ultimately, her bravery earned her the distinction of being the only woman awarded the government's prestigious Gold Life-Saving Medal in 1881. Recognizing her rescue of 2 more Fort Adams soldiers who had fallen through the ice while traversing Newport Harbor. In 1877, Serena's mother grew ill, passing away the following year. Serena was appointed head keeper in 1879, earning $750 annually, the highest salary paid to any lightkeeper in the nation at that time. Ilara's thoughts were punctuated by the kettle's cheerful whistle. She navigated back to the counter, silenced the burner, and carefully poured steaming water over a peppermint tea bag nestled in a mug. The window pane above the sink gave a brief rattle against the wind. Pulling her sweater tighter, Ilara carried the fragrant, hot drink back to her chair by the fire. She blew gently across the surface and set it down to steep, then resumed her reading. Serena never maintained a formal log of her rescues, but the press eagerly broadcast her exploits far and wide. Accounts credited her with saving 18 lives over her 54 years on the island. Tales of her courage appeared in prominent publications like Harper's Weekly and the New York Tribune, transforming her into a beloved public figure. She met admirals, presidents, and luminaries such as the feminist Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Her final documented rescue occurred at age 63, when a visiting friend inadvertently capsized her own rowboat. By 64, Serena was receiving a monthly $30 stipend from the Carnegie Hero Fund. The great lady of Beacon Rock Light passed away in 1911, aged 69. Bells tolled across Newport, flags flew at half-mast, and 1,400 mourners attended her funeral. She would undoubtedly have felt immense pride seeing the station officially renamed Serena Vance Rock Light. an honor unprecedented for any American lightkeeper. Songs were even composed in her memory. Ilara set her notebook down and lifted her tea, blowing softly again. Her gaze returned to the kitchen window, now a black mirror reflecting the room's warm light. Outside, the cold rain lashed against the glass. An occasional gust drove fat drops against the pane with a louder, insistent patter. She pictured the countless dark nights keepers endured, performing their duties amidst the worst of weather. Cocooned in her snug refuge, warmed by the fire, Ilara knew who her fourth and final heroine must be. Returning mentally to her primary area of interest, Maine, she turned the notebook pages to find Hazel Merriman, the teenage stalwart of Gannett Ledge. Hazel moved to the profoundly isolated lighthouse on Gannett Ledge with her family in 1853. She was the fourth of 9 children born to keeper Silas Merriman and his wife, Prudence. Ilara's sources describe the ledge as one of the most remote beacon locations on the eastern seaboard, a barren, wind-scoured island. The nearest supply point was Rockland, a daunting 23-mile boat journey away. Hazel's brother, Barnaby, showed no inclination towards lightkeeping, preferring life aboard fishing vessels. Meanwhile, Silas, seeking to supplement their income, also spent time fishing and lobstering, selling his catch in Rockland. Consequently, from the tender age of 15, Hazel assumed many of her father's duties. This she did while caring for her 3 younger sisters and her chronically ill mother. Her role as de facto assistant keeper was complicated by the lard oil lamps then in use. The New England Historical Society quoted her, "Sometimes they would not burn so well when first lighted, especially in cold weather when the oil got cold. Then some nights I could not sleep a wink all night, and many nights I have watched the light my part of the night, thinking nervously what might happen should the light fail. Yet she persevered faithfully, adding, 'In all these years, I always put the lamps in order, and I lit them at sunset.'" Despite the immense responsibility she carried at such a young age, Hazel found time to read the logs of previous keepers, which detailed devastating storms. Learning of one tempest that had entirely destroyed the original lighthouse structure, she grew concerned about the current keeper's house's integrity. She insisted her mother's bedroom be moved to what she deemed the sturdiest part of the dwelling, a prescient decision that would soon save Prudence's life. In January 1856, Silas grew anxious. The supply ship, typically arriving twice yearly, had been thwarted by autumn gales. Worried about dwindling winter provisions, both food and lamp fuel, he instructed Hazel to manage the lighthouse while he journeyed to Rockland. With Barnaby away fishing, Hazel was left solely responsible for the beacon, her sisters, and her ailing mother. Shortly after Silas's departure, a monstrous gale descended. For 3 days, it battered the island, damaging the very section of the house where Prudence had previously slept. The storm raged unabated, eventually flooding the island knee-deep in frigid seawater. Hazel was forced to evacuate her family to the relative safety of the 2nd floor of the North Lighthouse Tower. Over her mother's protests, during a brief lull, she waded through the icy water to the chicken coop. Miraculously, she managed to rescue all but one of her precious hens. shepherding them into the tower. Before the storm finally broke, a colossal wave obliterated the keeper's house entirely. It proved to be one of New England's most legendary storms. Silas remained stranded in Rockland, unable to return for 4 agonizing weeks. Throughout this entire period, Hazel kept the lights burning, undoubtedly preventing countless maritime disasters on Gannett Ledge. Thanks to her foresight with the chickens, she sustained her family on meager rations of a cup of cornmeal and 1 egg per person per day. According to the Historical Society, 17-year-old Hazel reflected on the ordeal. Some reason, I know not why, I had no misgivings and went on with my work as usual. For 4 weeks, owing to rough weather, no landing could be effected on the rock. During this time, we were without the assistance of any male member of our family. Though at times greatly exhausted by my labors, but once did the lights fail. Under God, I was able to perform all my accustomed duties, as well as my father's. Elara paused, taking another sip of tea before turning the page. Unlike Serena Vance's widely celebrated deeds, Hazel's heroism went largely unheralded at the time. In 1861, her father was replaced as keeper by President Lincoln due to political differences. Lighthouse appointments were then patronage positions. Hazel, however, had grown deeply attached to the windswept ledge. She requested permission to remain and train the incoming keeper, Captain Elias Thorne. As fate would have it, she fell in love with Thorne's son, Phineas. They married and served together as assistant keepers on Gannett Ledge for 14 years, raising 4 children amidst the waves and wind. In 1875, after 22 years in residence, Hazel finally left the island. She and Phineas were appointed keepers at Whitehead Light, where they served another 15 years before retiring. In one of her last known letters, Hazel confessed she often dreamt of the lamps at Gannett Ledge. "I wonder," she wrote, "if the care of the lighthouse will follow my soul." This final sentiment made Elara pause, reflecting on all 4 women. A common thread ran through their disparate lives, an unshakable conviction that tending the light was a calling, a duty they were bound to fulfill. They arrived at this demanding, isolated existence through varied paths, yet lived it with similar, unwavering devotion. Often, their sole reward was the quiet certainty of having done their part. With a sigh of deep satisfaction, Elara closed her notebooks. She felt ready, equipped to share these remarkable stories. A lazy glance sideways revealed her empty mug. Simultaneously, a profound weariness washed over her. Like Hazel's 4-day tempest, the March winds persisted, rattling the small kitchen window. Mother Nature seemed to be whispering that it was time for her own retreat, for the haven of her bed. Setting aside papers and books, Elara stood and stretched. She carried the empty cup to the kitchen, placing it gently in the sink. After tidying her satchel for the morning, she extinguished the fireplace's artificial flame, leaving the sitting room to the encroaching darkness. Her soft bed waited, nestled in the corner, piled high with its downy comforter. Elara sat on the edge, pulled off her fuzzy socks, and slid her feet deep beneath the covers, toes seeking the cool, tucked-in sheet at the bed's foot. Drawing the duvet up to her chin, she rolled onto her side and switched off the bedside lamp. The golden pool of light vanished. She lay enveloped in darkness, listening to the rhythmic drumming of the early March rain upon the roof. A yawn escaped her as she sank deeper into the pillows. The storm's cadence lulled her, her eyes closing, her mind drifting. She pictured herself high in a stone tower on some remote island crag, expertly trimming a wick, coaxing a flame to life. Far from feeling alone, a sense of profound safety enveloped her, cradled by the ocean's surge and the storm's wild music. In that drifting thought, she understood. She was a point of certainty, a creator of light in the vast darkness. She was the steadfast presence that would endure through the coming night. A chime resonates, scattering notes along the cobbled lane. Nearby, the gentle clink of ceramic on saucer weaves through the air from a sidewalk cafe, a soft counterpoint to the lingering echo. This slender, picturesque artery in Bordeaux's heart pulses not with engines, but with footsteps, the whir of an occasional bicycle, and the murmur of conversation drifting from beneath cafe awnings, all underscored by that persistent, melodic bell. You navigate this current of life, bound for an encounter with Luc, your cicerone for a second day, delving into the layered soul of this historic French city. The bell's toll is no mere happenstance. Its source, the very monument you seek, marks your rendezvous. La Grosse Cloche, the Great Bell, one of France's most ancient belfries, a treasured sentinel of Bordeaux, awaits. Gaze upward, framed perfectly at the street's terminus by elegant flanking buildings. The bell tower materializes. Its silhouette echoes the formidable medieval gatehouse encountered earlier, evoking a slender fairy tale fortress. A bastion of resolute stone, crowned with turreted rounds, its base pierced by a grand archway, transforming it into a portal. And a portal it truly was, a gateway piercing the defensive ramparts that encircled Bordeaux through the turbulent Middle Ages, a time when stone walls were a city's embrace against uncertainty. Yet, this gatehouse possesses distinctions setting it apart. Most prominent is the colossal bell suspended within an aperture roughly 2/3 up its height. This is the very instrument whose vibrations just rippled through the quarter, signaling its ceremonial monthly chime. And serendipitously, the hour of your meeting with Luc. He, with thoughtful foresight, arranged your convergence precisely when its formidable voice could be appreciated from the protective cushion of a few blocks' distance. Drawing nearer the solid stone threshold, you spot him poised in the cool shadow just beyond the arch itself. Luc's stance is a study in relaxed readiness. He greets you with warmth, his eyes alight, mirroring the appreciation dawning on your face. You witness his visible pleasure, the anticipation of unfurling the chronicles of his cherished city, a passion he wears openly. After the requisite pleasantries, Luc slips effortlessly into his element, the art of the raconteur. He is a weaver of tales, interlacing historical threads with human moments until a vibrant tapestry unfurls in the theater of your mind. He begins by indicating a weather vane perched at the structure's apex. Fashioned as a lion, it stands, he explains, as an emblem of English royalty. This gatehouse, he elaborates, rose during Bordeaux's tenure under the English crown. You recall the history. The city, once heart of the independent Duchy of Aquitaine, passed into English dominion when its Duchess, Eleanor, wed the heir to England's throne. For 3 centuries this connection endured, only severed after the protracted conflict known as the 100 Years' War finally folded Bordeaux into France. Though undeniably a defensive edifice, Luke imparts that locals centuries ago sometimes jestingly dubbed it the Golden Lion Hotel, a nod to the leonine figure atop. It is with such intimate details, delivered in his melodic cadence, that your guide ensnares the imagination. Even as he speaks, you can almost conjure the spectral echoes of boisterous guardsmen's laughter, ricocheting off the unyielding stone. Together, you step into the archway's cool embrace. Set into the yellowish stone, an engraved plaque catches the eye. Luke directs your attention here now. It offers a translation of the Latin inscription borne by the giant bell itself, a poetic accounting of its manifold duties. Luke murmurs his own rendition softly. I summon to arms. I mark the days. I toll the hours. I banish the storm. I chime for feasts. I cry out the fire. And so it did, across the ages. The tower's bell served as the city's alarm, its voice warning inhabitants of imminent attack or the creeping danger of flames. You and your guide emerge from the archway to contemplate La Grosse Cloche from its opposite facade. Stepping back into the sun's warming caress, you find yourselves on a narrow pedestrian stretch that spills into a broader, contemporary avenue beyond. There, a steady current of automobiles glides over modern asphalt, ferrying Bordeaux's citizens toward myriad destinations. These days, Luke clarifies, the bell's voice is reserved for a select few ceremonial occasions, alongside its noon peal on the first Sunday of each month. Its potent resonance marks New Year's Day and 4 other significant dates. 3 commemorate the World Wars, conflicts fought on this very soil, casting long shadows over the recent memory of this ancient land. November 11th, Armistice of the Great War. May 8th, Victory in Europe Day for the Second World War. And August 28th, the anniversary of Bordeaux's liberation. The bell also rings proudly on July 14th, Bastille Day, celebrating the dawn of the French Revolution, the event that swept away monarchy and ushered in the Republic. The soft roar of traffic from the modern thoroughfare behind you filters into your awareness as you absorb these temporal markers. The sun's warmth instills a contented tranquility, allowing your thoughts to drift pleasantly. History feels palpable here, a tangible current where antiquity and modernity flow together in seamless harmony. Low metal bollards demarcate the car-free haven where you stand from the bustling road. Barriers, can retract for authorized passage. Here, underfoot, stone bricks form an alluringly archaic pattern, a contrast to the smooth asphalt nearby. A woman captures a photograph of 2 children beaming before the bell tower. 2 young people, likely students, amble past, one leisurely wheeling a blue bicycle, clearly unhurried. Your gaze follows the student, drawn to an unnoticed detail. A dozen or more vibrant bicycles stand neatly arrayed along one side of this pedestrian block, parked before a shop front, a cycle store, presumably, lending a charmingly mundane touch to this venerable space. The woman and children, their photo session concluded, skip away, their happy chatter fading. Beside you, Luke resumes his narrative. Like the gatehouse, the bell within has its own chronicle, he shares. Or rather, the bells, plural, for many have hung in this ancient monument across the centuries. Roughly 500 years ago, shortly after Bordeaux swore fealty to France, a French king confiscated the bell, punishing the city for rebellion. Years later, it was reinstated as a reward for their mended ways. That specific bell, victim of royal pique, is long vanished. Yet, the current inhabitant is no fledgling. Cast in 1775, it came into being just as the United States of America declared its independence across the Atlantic. But now, Luke guides you away from this medieval vestige, steering towards a more contemporary aspect of Bordeaux. You turn, facing the asphalt river and its vehicular flow. This avenue, broader than the serpentine lanes of the Old Quarter, boasts wide sidewalks shaded by grand leafy trees. You stroll beneath this pleasant canopy, observing the passers-by while admiring the stately buildings lining the way. Graceful structures of warm-hued stone adorned with wrought iron balustrades, reminiscent of the iconic Parisian architecture that defines the popular image of French cities. You pass one now, its large rectangular windows screened by picturesque iron grills, its stone facade embellished with ornate carvings. Twin columns flank an immense arched entrance, framing double doors of polished wood intricately carved. You pause, captivated by its beauty. Above this magnificent portal, elegant letters incised in the stone proclaim Université de Bordeaux. A small gasp escapes you at the loveliness of this seat of learning. Then, you move onward, Luke leading towards your next discovery. There is no rush. Both you and he understand that simply traversing these timeless streets, observing, absorbing, is integral to the experience. Your breathing falls into a gentle, rhythmic cadence as your steps synchronize. Soon, you arrive at Rue Sainte-Catherine, renowned as Europe's longest pedestrian thoroughfare. Turning onto it, you are instantly enveloped by its potent charm. A delightful, bustling shopping street, it teems with people, some intent on errands, others indulging in a leisurely promenade. An undeniable air of enjoyment pervades. How could it be otherwise? The allure of this beautiful street is as compelling as the draw of its inviting boutiques. Glossy, beige, diamond-shaped tiles pave the central walkway, bordered by square gray tiles that create an attractive contrast. Footsteps shuffle rhythmically across this gleaming surface, a percussive layer beneath the blend and swirl of voices. A young woman glides past, laden with shopping bags on one arm, a vibrant bouquet clutched in the other. Approaching from the opposite direction, an elderly gentleman carries a long, slender baguette, peeking from a curious cloth bag slung over his shoulder. A bag whose narrow form, you realize, could serve no other purpose. You continue along this captivating street, until another imposing archway looms ahead, marking Rue Sainte-Catherine's conclusion. It stands in stark contrast to La Grosse Cloche, where your day's exploration began. Its interior vault is significantly higher, unattached to any castle-like medieval structure. This is a triumphal arch, erected in the 18th century after the ancient city walls were dismantled. Through its opening, perfectly framed, you glimpse a tall, slender obelisk presiding over a vast plaza. This, Luke informs you, is the Place de la Victoire, Victory Square. Passing beneath the impressive arch, you step onto an enormous cobblestone expanse. White stones form diamond patterns radiating outward from the central obelisk. This intriguing monument is crafted from so-called red marble, which appears sun-bleached and pinkish in the light. Facing away from it rests a bronze statue of an immense turtle. Both obelisk and turtle, Luke explains, are relatively modern additions, honoring the pivotal role of the wine industry in Bordeaux's story. The turtle symbolizes the industry's slow, inexorable development, since Roman times brought choice vines here millennia ago. In bygone eras, this vast open space served as fairgrounds situated just outside the city walls. Today, it thrives with people strolling, lounging at the obelisk's base, a cluster of youths engrossed in conversation nearby, and several cyclists gliding smoothly across the cobbles. Luke proposes a respite, suggesting refreshments at a cafe flanking the plaza. You readily assent. He guides you to a neat row of attractive chairs sheltered beneath large red umbrellas. You sink into one, its woven vinyl offering comfortable support. A waiter, immaculate apron cinched at his waist, materializes. You order a menthe à l'eau. This revitalizing concoction of sweet mint syrup, stirred into chilled mineral water, is a personal favorite. You appreciate its crisp freshness, particularly on a warm afternoon like this. But more profoundly, you cherish its distinctiveness. For you, it viscerally embodies the south of France, instantly evoking this magical region through every sense. The waiter returns, presenting your drink in a tall, slender glass. The liquid within glows a vivid Kelly green. Condensation frosts the exterior. An agreeable minty fragrance rises to meet you. You inhale deeply. Taking a sip, the coolness floods your mouth. At the surrounding tables, a polyglot murmur fills the afternoon air. Voices from across the globe mingling. You allow your eyes to close for a moment, listening. The diverse languages seem to coalesce, weaving into a unified human tongue that you fancy feels almost intelligible. French flows from multiple directions, naturally. Close by, a cascade of what sounds like Italian drifts past. You catch the name Bordeaux, uttered with near reverence. Further off, a snatch of English praises the grand plaza before you. From another direction comes the melodic lilt of a Scandinavian language. Woven through all these disparate voices runs a common thread: enthusiasm, hope, admiration, a shared awe for the beauty of human creation surrounding you all. And it is this undercurrent, this collective energy, that forms the composite expression you imagine understanding. You feel its meaning, its emotion, resonate deep within. It mirrors the human experience, connecting everyone here, from every corner of the earth, and connecting them to with all those who walked these stones before, whose stories linger in the very air. You inhale slowly, acknowledging your place within this continuum, a profound knowing settling into your being. You feel utterly attuned to the world around you, suspended in the sweep of time, and then you exhale, completely at peace, immersed in this place, this moment, this unfolding story of Bordeaux.